Good evening, and welcome to another episode of The Fire Caves, a Star Trek Deep Space Nine podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Perry.
I'm your host, David. Tonight we're talking about Season 4, Episode 23, To the Death. Before we continue, you can find us on Facebook, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube as The Fire Caves, a Star Trek Deep Space Nine podcast.
That is correct, and as I say every single week, you should find us and follow us because we are great, we're awesome, we're a good time. But I will also say that we can now add Twitter or X back into our access point. I finally got everything cleared up after all this time.
Finally. Only
So
took all of
yes,
Season 4.
like yeah, all of season four. So we'll probably just start posting things for season five and beyond once again there. But I did get all of that finally taken care of, so we are golden
Right.
on that. So we can start saying yes, Twitter as well or X now. Geez, I,
I insist on Twix. I insist on Twix. That's
hey,
what I'm going to call it from now on.
well, I'll only be posting on the right side. So there.
Okay. Well, I'm glad that worked out. I didn't know. You just now revealed that to me as well. So that's great.
It happened today. It really was today. It just it worked out. I was able to work with our kind of behind the scenes tech guru for all things Holosuite Media, and we really just kind of just sat and worked through it and got
Nice.
it. So
Awesome.
yeah, that was today, and got a couple other things cleared up for us as well. And to that end, we have an email address apparently that you can also send emails to if you've got questions, comments, concerns, so forth and so on that maybe we didn't address at some point, or maybe we just didn't see if you had posted it anywhere else for some strange reason. Because I'm finding out that that may have occurred for some things too. So yeah, if you have questions or anything like that, please feel free to send them to our email address, which is of course thefirecaves@gmail.com. So yeah, lots of ways you can interact with us and we will interact with you. As always, we say, of course, anything you send, please be courteous, please be polite, and please allow us time, of course, to respond because
Yes.
we do have lives as well to deal with. And yeah, we don't mind what you have to say. Just follow those rules, and we'll be all right.
Boom.
Um, so yes, as David said, we are talking about the episode To the Death, the 95th episode in the run of Deep Space Nine, and the 22nd, right? You said that 22nd episode of the fourth season.
23rd. If we consider the opening two episodes of this season as two episodes, even though they are part of the same storyline, then this is episode 23.
Nah, we don't do that.
Wiki,
No.
well, Wikipedia is weird about it because sometimes it says 22, sometimes it says 23. So
No.
23 is what I said tonight. So if we
No.
want to count it as 22, whatever. But yeah,
I've always thought of it as if it's a continuation, that means the story wasn't done. So they're all a part of the same. Now this can be kind of problematic when we get into some later parts of Deep Space Nine, which I'll explain when we get there. But don't worry about that for tonight.
gotcha.
We'll just say the 22nd episode was also directed by none other than Geordie LaForge himself, Mr. LeVar Burton.
Oh, very nice.
So another Star Trek alum getting behind the camera there and doing some work.
All
Star
right.
Trek has a pretty big history of that, allowing their actors to kind of go through their film school basically,
Right.
and then getting to work on their shows to get their directing chops up. So
Right.
I think it's a great idea. I love seeing that, and yeah, let's see. If my memory serves, Jonathan Frakes is probably the most prolific Star Trek director to date. Not only did he do a few episodes of Next Generation, he also did Deep Space Nine,
Hmm.
Voyager, um, Enterprise, and he's done Discovery and Picard and Strange New Worlds. So yeah, pretty much all of the new ones that needed a director, he's done it.
Right.
So yeah.
Hey, we need a fill-in guy. All right, Riker, get in here.
Yeah, it's pretty much how it goes. We need a director,
Come on, Frakes.
and right, and apparently he really loves it, and the actors love it too when he directs. That there's been several instances of behind the scenes stuff, and they talk about just how great of a director he is, and he's very fun. And I can't think of a better thing to have on a Star Trek show than a former Star Trek actor who still loves the franchise and the show, who works with those guys to tell them, what's up. So
Yeah. When I was, I recently rewatched there's the Honest Trailers YouTube channel that for whatever reason, it popped up my feed again, the Galaxy Quest version,
uh-huh.
which, you know, I've discussed before. Galaxy Quest, part of the plot is
Yes.
that, they are going to like Comic-Con type conventions or Star Trek conventions is more accurate for the show. And knowing that Jonathan Frakes was one of the guys who like goes to all the like Star Trek conventions, like yeah, they're basically like saying, like Jonathan Frakes in particular is the guy who like really goes out there and like sees the fans and interacts
Yes.
with the fans and all that. So, but yeah, once again, Galaxy Quest is amazing. You and I should do an After Dark where we talk about Galaxy Quest a little bit.
You know what? I'm actually totally down, and mainly because, well, one, I really did love that movie when I watched it, but also so many Star Trek actors have watched it and
Yeah,
really loved it.
yeah,
I know Patrick Stewart talked about how at first he was really hesitant to go and see it,
yeah,
but I believe it was actually Jonathan Frakes who convinced him to go see it, and he
yeah.
did. And he loved it.
Right,
So yeah, and anyone who's talked about it that has been in Star Trek has all said the same thing, how they were kind of like iffy, thought
right.
they were going to be getting made fun of, whatever, but then it's fun, it's lighthearted, it's a nice wink and nod to
Yes.
Trek and greater sci-fi
Yeah.
shows, of course. But yeah,
Yeah.
definitely Trek
Yeah.
inspired, definitely Trek inspired.
Yes.
So
Oh, 100%. As someone who wasn't a Star Trek fan when I first saw Galaxy Quest as a kid, I immediately enjoyed it, loved it, and knew that it was both making fun of and like in a friendly way. As if you
yeah,
poke a friend,
yeah,
you tease a friend, not in a cruel or way. But anyway, so yeah,
absolutely. So Dan, we can do that. We'll take a break from Expanse stuff, and we'll just do a night where we watch it and review it and so forth. Yeah, I'm fine with that.
great.
Absolutely. Um, Now, before we get into the subject of tonight's podcast, how's your week been?
Week's been good. Okay. So this week was Labor Day at work. So Monday, which was Labor Day, was a very busy day for me, which was great. But man, it's been dead. Otherwise, it's been frustrating how dead it's been. It's not good, frankly. Things are not going to go up anytime soon, frankly. So,
Yeah, I mean
um,
that's news everywhere. Is how it's kind of getting worse out there with inflation and so
right.
forth and so forth. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm in a decent store in a decent area, but as my boss said on Monday, he was like, "Man, that store really hits off on holidays, but lately not. It's kind of it." So I'm like, "Ugh." So not happy there. But I have been reading the book I mentioned I was going to start reading, which is Fall and Rise, which is about 9/11. Last week I said it's kind of like the version of what happened on 9/11, and I think I might have overstated a little bit. Well, it certainly does do like a detailed walkthrough about the events that happened. When it comes to talking about the persons involved, like it'll do kind of a deep dive on certain persons. But when you consider that 3,000 people were killed, and then multiple others were affected, the number of people that it can deep dive into is so minuscule amongst all
Mhm.
of those people that I would probably take that back. It's not like the definitive in the sense that it doesn't tell the story of everybody. It tells a number of stories that are interesting as a part of the overall experience.
Mhm.
But I don't want to oversell that and say like this is the one version of everything that happened. No, there's like you can go. I was on YouTube watching clips and watching stories, and there's stuff that I didn't read about in the book so far. I'm almost done with it. I plan on finishing it on the 11th as a part of my reading, and it's been good. Definitely, I'm someone who when I read or watch something, I can kind of tear up a little bit. Just reading stuff like that. It's
Did
personal.
David did David just admit he has feelings? Oh no.
I'm
You
not
can't,
an automaton. I
you,
definitely have feelings, unlike the rest of my robotic companions.
oh no, you can't do that. Don't admit you have feelings.
Nope, nope.
No emotions here. Not
Yeah.
allowed.
But after I finished that, I the new Hercule Poirot, A Haunting in Venice, starring Kenneth Branagh, will be coming out this week. I've watched the previous Kenneth Branagh Hercule Poirot movies, including The Murder on the Orient Express and Death on the Nile. I don't think they are as good as I would have hoped them to be. Um,
Although this one looks really interesting, and it has none other than our other Star Trek alum, Miss
Michelle,
Michelle Yeoh, Academy Award winning Star Trek alum Michelle Yeoh.
and
So
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. And I read Agatha Christie a lot as a kid, so I don't remember reading this story because this one is certainly taking a more like supernatural element. Like, is everything happening because of supernatural stuff, or is it just people pretending? And Michelle
hmm
Yeoh is like the seance witch doctor type, not witch doctor,
yeah.
not quite right. But anyway, she's like
No,
seems
yeah,
to be
she's like the
yeah,
madam or something, right? Who does the
right.
seances, the clairvoyant.
That's probably the better word. Yeah.
Yeah,
So I plan on reading the book because I always like reading the books before I go see stuff. Or once I realize something was a book, go back and read the book, like with
yeah,
Altered Carbon, for example,
or the Expanse.
or The Expanse, exactly. Yeah, I'll be reading that and then go watch the movie at some point, and I'll get back with you and see how that is. But yeah, that's me. How about you?
Pretty much the same. I have been working a lot, and I'm actually starting to look for some other opportunities because you know, I'm never really happy with complacency, basically. Um, I started watching, well, I should say, start and finished watching a show called Dark Winds because it's on HBO Max or just Max as everything's being rebranded these days. And they had the whole first season. So I was like, okay, I'll watch a couple of these, see what it's about. Ended up really getting sucked into it and just blasted through the whole first season.
Which was six
Found,
episodes, to be fair.
yeah,
I mean, it's not like we were watching 20.
yeah, that's true. That's true. But it was like, yeah, it doesn't matter. That's what it was.
Yeah.
Um, but it was a great show. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the characters that we saw so far. I'm really interested to see the next season, and hopefully AMC will release that soon so I can get my hands on that second season and watch it. Been watching One Piece, as I said last week. I kind of fell into that, and again, still really enjoying it. I could get over the numerous clip show episodes, of course, but other than that, it's been enjoyable to watch.
Right.
I have been taking a break from reading since we just finished Sibylla Byrne, the fourth book in
Yep.
the Expanse series. We'll be starting number five, I guess, this coming week. Guess I'll go ahead and start that.
Great.
Just to be back on track and getting ahead there. But other than that, that has really been it for me. And
Right.
raising my kid, of course. So yeah, you don't want to say that half-heartedly or last or whatever. Last but not least, I'm still a parent. So yeah, it's
When I got time to fit that in.
yeah.
Very good. Very good. Yeah.
But of course, we're not here to talk about all that stuff. We are here to talk about this episode to the death. Um, uh, as I say a lot, interesting episode, lots of action, returning us to the focal point, which is the Dominion, and learning more about the Dominion and the Jem'Hadar and the Vorta and their relationship with the founders and so forth and so on. Just a lot of great stuff, and we get to see the first major Jeffrey Combs character in this episode. So, gonna definitely talk
Okay.
about that. Now,
Okay.
did you want to give the summation, or did you want me to do it?
I'm happy to do it, though. This one is pretty detailed. If you feel it, you want to do it. I'm happy to let you go for it.
Just for the sake of, I guess, time, I guess, and getting us through this, so that we can get back to talking about it. I'll run through it really quick.
Go for it. Yeah.
Um, because there is a lot, and there are a lot of tie-ins to other treks like Next Generation.
Hmm.
So with this one, we see that the Defiant is coming home. They seem to have been on a very long mission. Everybody seems a bit tired, ready to get back to the station. They go through the wormhole, come up on the station, and it's been attacked. One of the upper pylons has been blown to bits, and there's people are in the corridors, hurt, dead, whatever.
Right.
We see Kira right away. She gives a breakdown of what happened. Basically, it was a like a bank robbery. These Jem'Hadar being aboard the station as a strike team. They attacked a bunch of people, they blew up a pylon, and they stole a bunch of equipment. This happened maybe 45 minutes before the Defiant showed up. So Cisco decides, we're not going to stay and take care of everybody. He basically splits it so that Kira stays, Bashir stays, everybody else gets back on the Defiant, and we're off to track down the marauding Jem'Hadar strike team. This leads them back through the wormhole, and they're hot on their heels. But the Jem'Hadar have been doing some things to make it a little bit difficult to follow them until they happen upon another Jem'Hadar ship. This one also heavily damaged, or this one heavily damaged, not also heavily damaged, but just damaged.
Right.
It's sending out a distress call. Cisco's kind of, on the fence about what to do. Worf's just like, nah, it could be a trap, blow them up, whatever. But they decide not to. They beam the survivors onto the Defiant, sands their weapons, of course, and that's where they discover that these Jem'Hadar are being led by an alien called Vorta, one that we had seen once before when we first were introduced to the Jem'Hadar in the third season, I believe that was when the Odyssey got destroyed.
It was the very final episodes of season 2. Yeah, it was like,
Yeah,
understand correctly. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
And so this Horta is named Wayoon, and this would be the Jeffrey Combs character. The first time that we see him playing a Vorta. For those of you familiar with Jeffrey Combs, you know that he's got a very storied history with Star Trek and playing characters like this, playing various aliens. He's been on Deep Space Nine, Voyager. He's even in Lower Decks. He's got a voice character there too. So, um, but anyway, basically, Wayoon lets them know that the Jem'Hadar who attacked the station were renegades, and they have now been tasked with tracking them down. But obviously, they were ambushed and their ship's been destroyed, and it makes it impossible for them to continue their mission. And he decides that Cisco and company are it's in their best interest to partner up and go after these renegade Jem'Hadar. Cisco's like, why do I care?
right,
It sounds like that's your problem. And then that's when
right,
Wayoon reveals that these guys have found an Iconian gateway, which, if you can remember from the Next Generation, the first Iconian gateway was discovered in the episode Contagion, and the Iconians were this massively advanced race that had a empire that spanned countless number of worlds, and they had these gateways which would allow you to walk instantaneously from one place to another across solar systems, across whatever. It didn't Distance didn't really seem to be an issue for them.
right,
So the fear is if these Jem'Hadar can control this gateway, they can gain followers, sympathizers, boost their ranks, and then they'll just take over the Gamma Quadrant and the rest of Dominion, and then they'll turn their sights on the Alpha Quadrant. So it's in everybody's best interest if they blow this thing up.
right,
So the crews decide that yes, begrudgingly, they have to work together. They start to train each other in their various tactics and weapons. They do a mock layup of the Iconian Gateway so they can practice moving through the layout in order to get to a point where they can blow it up. Worf has some issues with one of the other um, Jem'Hadar and ends up getting into a fight with him, which eventually leads the Jem'Hadar first, his name is Metaclon, to kill him. And when Cisco is
to
then
kill his second Jem'Hadar, to be
yes,
clear. Yeah, not
yes,
Worf. Worf's still
not yes, yeah,
alive.
to kill the Jem'Hadar who was fighting with Worf.
Right,
Worf is not similarly disciplined. He is instead restricted to being in his quarters whenever he's not on duty. And the first, a Metaclon, he criticizes Cisco's command techniques because he says that the rest of the subordinates learn nothing if he's not willing to be, more strict.
right,
So this is basically kind of setting up how severe, the Jem'Hadar are in comparison to really anybody else because
right,
they're even out Klingoning the Klingons here with
right,
their to the death stuff.
right,
We do have some moments of levity, like when Dax is paired up with her Jem'Hadar partner, who we learned through him that Jem'Hadar they age differently. So by the time he was only 3 years old. By the time they're 5 or 6 or something like that, they're kind of about ready to retire, and no Jem'Hadar has ever made it to 30 years old or something like that. And
Right.
that's when we find out that Dax is somewhere north of 300
Right.
years old. So
We knew that, but yeah,
yeah,
keep
we
going.
knew that, but yeah, that's just kind of the whole point, was to show that he's got such a short life versus her very expanded one.
Right.
So they finally make it to the planet where the Iconian Gateway is. They beam down. None of their weapons and stuff work because there seems to be a dampening field being put out by the gateway that's stopping all the any technology from working. Before they can really come up with a plan to how to counteract this, they are set upon by the Jem'Hadar, who have these personal cloaking phase devices, which allow them to sneak up on them. They engage in
Right.
hand-to-hand combat, make a run for the gateway. They fight their way in, Worf leading the charge, of course, doing an excellent job either throwing or slashing people to bits as he moves through. They come to the base of the gateway. They lay the charges, and just before they're able to escape, Cisco gets stabbed, saving Omedicron's life.
Right.
Um, they make their way out. The gateway explodes, and there's this kind of weird, I have some respect for you, but at the same time, if I ever see you again, I'll kill you moment between Omedicron and Cisco.
Right.
And before they all beam away, of course, Omedicron kills Wayun. Basically the whole time, because Wayun
Right.
had been like, making light of their honor and their dedication to the founders and keeping information from them and so forth. So he's just like, we're at
Right.
the end of the mission. We don't need you anymore. So he kills him,
Right.
and our crew beams home, and that's essentially
Right.
the episode. Yes, we're going to talk about some more specific things, but that's pretty much it. And if there is anything that we miss in our discussion, I mean, you can always go and watch the episode. It's right there on Paramount Plus, waiting for you. Has been waiting for 30 years. So go watch it. Come back. See if you agree with us. If you don't, let us know. We'd love to hear from you.
Right.
So, David, of course, as the person who has never seen this episode before, what did you think? What were your first thoughts?
My first reaction is that I'm glad that we're getting into, as I've critiqued lately, I'm glad we're getting into our kind of a overall arching a plot. The Dominion is the major threat to our station because they're at the wormhole, and the Gamma Quadrant has the founders, the changelings, the Jem'Hadar. Um, the last time we even talked about changelings was all the way back when Cisco and the others went to Earth, and that was like halfway through the season, and we're nearing the end of the season. It's like the
Hmm.
changelings have not been a threat, or the Jem'Hadar have not been a threat for a while. Now we have seen the Jem'Hadar before, so what's fun about this episode is learning more about Jem'Hadar culture. Basically, they basically have one reason to exist, and that's to fight. And so they have little patience for anything outside of victory. And it also means that their lives are very, very simple, even criminally, or they're tragically simple and basic, as Dax discovers in her conversation with the Jem'Hadar that she was working with. Um, so I like that we have our main story going on. I like that we have a plot that really delves deeper into some of those things. I do have some some critiques, like this episode really deals with
Hmm.
insubordination. Before Worf gets out of line, it wasn't the first time. Worf made a comment during the briefing that he had with just the officers, and O'Brien makes a joke. He cracks a joke in it, which I felt was also not not right. In terms of like, hey, we got a serious situation. Basically, what happens is Cisco is telling his officers that we have this situation where there's a Jem'Hadar faction that's breaking away, and we need to keep the Jem'Hadar that we have on the ship in the dark about that situation because what's the handler guy's name?
Wait.
Wayun.
Hmm.
Wayun is afraid that if they learn about the true reasons that this faction is breaking away, that they will turn on him and turn on the Dominion, and so he wants them kept in the dark. So Cisco's like, well, he wants us to keep them in the dark. We'll keep them in the dark. Worf makes a comment about how we shouldn't defend the station with 24 or 26/7, 26 hours in a day on Bajor. We shouldn't have the Defiant constantly on the defense around the station. It needs to be doing what it needs to do. But he says that in the middle of a briefing, he's basically contradicting what Cisco is saying, and it's like not as a like advice or I'm saying something to Cisco is because he's asking me for my opinion on something. He just gives it, and then when Cisco says that the briefing will be held at 1900 hours, O'Brien cracks a joke and saying, and at 1930 we're gonna all get together for drinks. Um, I just felt like Cisco, like I need you to crack a whip here. Like, hey
Well,
guys, we're in a very situation. We don't have time for jokes or this just stuff. Because then when Worf gets out of line, not only does it feel like he like in the actual briefing when the Jim Hadar dude gets out of line, no one says anything to him until he and Worf are going at it, and then suddenly everyone has something to say. Hey, you two, get back to your places. And then when they get in the fight later in the meal area, um, again, it felt like they everyone had been allowing insubordination to kind of brew. Is what I'm
yeah.
getting at.
Well,
So
so to me, that was always the Jem'Hadar showed absolutely no respect for anybody that wasn't them. And we also have to remember that in universe here, our officers they had just been returning from a mission and were
right,
probably looking for a time to, debrief, de-escalate, whatever, but they were immediately thrust back into this very intense situation. And I think that Cisco, he's always been a little bit more lax on some of those things than we would say, ever see Picard allowing on the bridge of the Enterprise.
right,
But yeah, allowing his officers to kind of vocalize their thoughts, their concerns, up to a point. He would never let anybody just kind of sit there and just rant whatever. But yeah, certainly allowing them to kind of get some of that out so that they can, refocus and rededicate themselves. He's done that several times before. So I don't think that's not in line with his character. But I could also see how, because this is a Ted situation, you would expect everybody to be a little bit more, you know, snap to on it.
right,
You know,
right. Yeah, yeah. My point is certainly that Worf critiquing, how the ship that the Defiant should be used around the station. That's like it's not the time for that conversation. And then O'Brien cracking a joke. It's like, thanks, Chief, but right now let's not crack jokes. This is very serious. I mean, let me put it this way: it seemed like a mistake the whole time to ever have the Jim Hadar and anyone from the Dominion on the ship at all. We
yeah,
know that the changelings exist, that they can change to anything they want, that they are hell bent on destroying the Federation. They've already been executing plots across. I mean, last season we had them basically trick a whole group of Romulan and Cardassian warships into tricking them into destroying themselves by chasing basically phantom changelings. They set them up to fail, and this it just feels like, oh my gosh, like guys, I love you, but you got to tell these Dominion fellas like I don't trust you. Go. You shouldn't have even saved them from their ship, and on a certain level. I mean, other than the Federation is honorable and they save people, but I'm with Odo. He's like, yeah, like Odo in a war for like this is a bad idea. I'm like,
hmm
yeah, I gotta agree with them. Sorry.
yeah. And that's one thing about that Worf's history. I mean, he's always being, cautious, and I mean, I think they try to paint him as being like overly cautious or whatever. But a lot of times he's right. And when we're dealing with these particular Jem'Hadar and how absolutely ruthless they are, I think that yeah, there should have been way more caution thrown their way than what we see. Absolutely. So once again,
Right.
Worf, I agree. Odo, yes, I agree, but no one's going to listen to you guys. I mean, if everybody
Yeah.
listened to the pragmatic ones in the group, there'd be no show. It'd be very
That's
boring.
exactly right. That's very right. Yeah. That's why whenever those things happen, I just kind of shake my head and go, okay, we have to have something happen in order for this to be interesting to watch.
Yeah,
So
that's how we get the talking points because everybody was just like, well, if they did the obvious thing that was the rational answer, then it would be very boring. It'd be
right.
watching the name of the show would be what? Star Trek public
Yeah.
relations. Like,
Yeah,
who
yeah,
cares? Like,
yeah.
no one wants to watch that. So yeah,
HR, yeah,
yeah, Star
exactly.
Trek HR. That would be so boring.
Yeah, and to be fair, it does create some fun moments. You already mentioned Jadzia talking with the Jem'Hadar, who's like, she's working at her station, and she turns to him and she's like, "You've been staring at me for 2 hours. What are you doing?" And he's like, "Well, I'm studying your behavior so I can learn to anticipate you." And they start talking about themselves. I mean, learn that the Jem'Hadar don't live very long. This one is only 8 years old, and anyone who lives to be like 20 is like considered ancient.
Hmm.
30 is outside the question. Like their whole lives, they don't sleep, they don't eat, other than the white, you know,
The Ketracel white,
drug,
which is being pumped into them.
which keeps
Um,
them obedient or empowered. And they also don't have women in their species. They are birthed in pods. And we've seen that already. We had an episode, I think back during season, it must have been season 3, where
yeah.
we had a young Jem'Hadar child uh, born on the station, and
Mhm.
he grows to like an adult within the entire episode. Like he grows up very quickly, as this Jem'Hadar says. Um, so yeah, it's an interesting culture. Again, as I've said before, the most interesting and the most successful thing that Star Trek has done is made me appreciate Klingon culture. And so here's another chance for the show to make me appreciate and become interested in another culture. In this case, the Jem'Hadar. Now, I don't think the Jem'Hadar are ever going to be as interesting as the Klingons, because the Jem'Hadar basically only exist for one reason, and that's to fight. And in this case, to be loyal to the founders, which is interesting in its own right. But every time Jim Hadar critiques someone for
Mhm.
fighting as good as ours, or only have that's the only reason you guys exist. It's like a robot, like a robot only can do one task, and it being and like if my computer ever came to me and said, "Ha, you can't compute as fast as I can," I'd be like, "Yeah, but that's all you're good for. I have a whole life to live," you know.
Yeah.
Um, so it's funny in the sense of like that's
Yeah.
our crew, but then there are moments, um, you know, I what am I trying to say? I'm trying to say it was interesting to find out more about the Jem'Hadar, but they're never going to be as
Yeah.
interesting as other cultures because they are overly simplified. That's what I'm getting at.
Yeah. Well, they kind of laid the groundwork for, greater complexity in in the characters, or in that culture, with characters like the first, a Metaclan.
Right.
He clearly shows that he's got a depth to him, and the way that he, is the foil for Cisco in this episode, and basically being like, um, we can do all these strategies and things all day long, but the simple fact is, you're not nearly as ruthless as we are, and
Right.
that's your failing. That's why the Dominion has lasted for as long as it's lasted, and Federation will be snuffed out soon. Is because you're not able to go there. Like,
Right.
they were already, to go and hunt down these renegade Jem'Hadar, and they were more upset with Wayoon lying to, or thinking he was lying to them, than
Right.
anything else, because it was a question of their loyalty, their
Loyalty.
honor, and they weren't going to stand for it. Anybody
Right.
who questions that for them needed to be eliminated. Whereas with, other species, human, Klingon, whomever, not just going to outright, murder people like that. Like, even if we had renegade, humans or whatever, we wouldn't we wouldn't treat them this way. We wouldn't hunt them down in
Right.
this manner, and he knows that. And so that's what he's trying to, kind of play off here. And I appreciated that they were trying to give us that depth, but it also just worked to highlight the fact that the Jem'Hadar are, I mean, they're monsters.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're literally bred for one task, and not only are they exceptionally good at the task, but they really enjoy it.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're yeah
Yeah.
scary.
Yeah. Going back to what I was saying though about the guy talking to Dax, it was a funny scene because, as you point out, Dax says, she says to him like, "How old do you think I am?" And I was like, "What?" Anyway, um, and he asked her, "How old are you?" And she said, "I stopped counting around 300." And he says, "Well, you look really good for your age." And
Yeah,
she
he's
kind of
like, yeah, you don't
shrugs.
look it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, of course, Dax is kind of fudging those numbers a little bit, as we know, but yeah, it's just a funny moment between them, and then um, the moment when Wayoon is talking with Cisco, and basically Cisco ends the little conversation. Like Wayoon wants Cisco to join him in fighting off this renegade Jim Hadar group, and he's like, "Do we have a
Hmm.
case?" And like whispers, he says, "We have an agreement," and it's just fun to see Cisco threaten like that. 'Cause on one level, it's just hilarious because it's like, oh, Cisco, I think you should be running right now. You shouldn't be threatening anybody. You should be telling him to get the heck off your ship. I don't got time for this nonsense. But on the
Well,
other hand, it's
I
also
like that
fun.
I like that he doesn't give ground. I like that he holds,
Right, right,
and then of course we get another kind of light-ish scene right before they beam down to the planet. First, Metacron gives his very dramatic "I am dead" speech,
right,
and just kind of brings everyone down, and
right.
then here comes O'Brien, and I'm Chief Miles Edward O'Brien, and I'm very much alive, and I intend to stay that way.
Exactly.
So it's
That was
just
a good
like,
moment too. Yeah, very funny. Yeah. So I'll say this: I like the episode because it again brings us back to our main plot. We get to see more about the Jafar and the Dominion. I don't remember all the details about the Stargate or whatever you want to call it from TNG. It's from
the
the second
Iconian
season,
Gateway.
so I know it's further
Mhm.
back. And I'm sure I like if we were to pull up images from
Ooh,
the episode, I'd be like, okay, I remember now.
so we can do some Trek lore. I love this part. All right. So,
Let's do it.
yes, the Iconians. They had this massive empire that was, spanned countless number of planets, and the way that they controlled all these planets was via use of the gateways. Now,
Right,
in the episode, which was in the second season, it was called Contagion of the Next Generation. The Yamato was a planet that had, oh, not, no, I'm sorry, the Yamato was the sister ship of the Enterprise, and
right,
they were the ones who had found an Iconian planet in the Romulan neutral zone, and a
right,
probe had been launched from the planet, which scanned the ship and ended up causing the ship to self-destruct. A similar probe scanned or attempted to scan a Romulan vessel in an episode, but they were able to destroy it. Picard, Worf, and Data make their way down to the Iconian planet,
right,
and they are trying to stop these probes and figure out what is slowly but surely also taking over the Enterprise, hoping they can figure out a way to stop it before it destroys the Enterprise.
right,
In their attempts to do so, pressing some buttons in a very kind of childlike manner, they accidentally activate the gateway, which starts to flash with all these images of different planets.
right,
And eventually, it even syncs up to where it shows the bridge of the Enterprise and the bridge of the Romulan ship. So we know that the Iconians use these gateways to move troops and people and so forth from one planet to another, and that's kind of how they took over.
right,
History shows that people believe that the Iconians were demons who were marauding through space and so forth, and that eventually a group of heroes put down the Iconians. um, this is a remnant of that technology. This is only the second time, and really, if I can think about it real quick, it's the only other time that the Iconians are mentioned in Star Trek. We don't see them ever again. So, well, unless you count the stuff that happens in the game Star Trek Online, which a lot of people don't, because that's a whole other universe in and of itself. So, yeah,
okay.
yeah, they've got all their own lore. Like, the best way I've always compared the Star Trek Online stuff is, another favorite topic for us is the Dune series. So what we see on TV is the original Dune series as written by Frank Herbert.
Right.
Everything on Star Trek Online is his son.
Yeah.
It's like his
Right.
son. Yeah.
Right.
So there. But yeah, this is the only other time that we hear mention of the Iconians and their gateways and how powerful they are. The look of the gateway is similar in this episode, in that it has the same flashes. It does different scenes and stuff. If you pay close enough attention, some of the scenes that you see flashing through in this episode are Bajor, Romulus, Earth, and there's like I think there's like a throwback to one they used from the TNG run is
Right.
on there, but that's
I thought I
that's it.
saw the Eiffel Tower in there. I was like, uh-oh.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, so it was just showing that this gateway could really, with programming, could pretty much take them anywhere.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the only other time that we see that, and the shape of it is different in the Next Generation episode. It's like a nice, rectangular column, whereas this one's like a big, well, gate.
Yeah.
So yeah, but we know the Iconians existed. What was it? What did they say? 100, 200,000 years previously to this.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I like the idea of the whole, long dead ancient cultures. It's not the first time that Star Trek has done that either. The Iconians, I think, are the first group. No, yeah, I think they're the first group that we hear about, and then the Takan Empire was another one that we heard about, and they also had their origination in the Next Generation. We don't really hear of those again, but
Right.
like that notion of ancient, really advanced civilizations that rose and fell long before any of us were ever anything.
Right.
I don't know. I've always found that very fascinating. They try to say that something similar is going on Earth right now. That they're constantly uncovering, um, uh, ancient cities and stuff that were way more advanced than we initially had speculated. So, like, this may be like the second or third rise of humanity on the planet, or whatever. I don't know where you want to fall in believing any of those things, but I mean, it's certainly interesting to listen to, and it's great to fall asleep to. So if you're ever
Yeah.
bored,
Right.
go and find one of those like ancient alien documentaries, man. It'll just wind you up. Yeah.
What's that image of that guy with the long hair? And he's like,
Yeah, the Greek guy that's not Greek, aliens, man, with the hair. Yeah.
yeah.
And he's got a Greek name, but I believe he's like Swedish or something like that. He's very weird.
Yeah, yeah. There's a picture of him. I do want to say that my critique of the episode is that the final battle at the end, like they were setting up the idea that there's like 150 of these Jem'Hadar dudes we have to go fight, and we only have 5 of our own Jem'Hadar because he kills one of them. And then we have our crew, and we have some yellow shirts, and I just felt like
Yeah.
side mission.
Num-
I don't feel like you guys have near enough people to take on
Numbers were
Jem'Hadar,
not
the
on
whole
our
Jim
side.
battalion. Yeah, and then like they
Yeah.
basically walk through them like butter. Yeah, we see a couple of yellow shirts bite it. But that's my one complaint. Really, is that the final battle felt like I never felt like the stakes were as high as they should have been. Even when the phasers went down, the phasers weren't working, and so they had to use battle axes. And so Cisco and Dax and Worf and all the others are grabbing these giant battle axe sword looking things, and they're able to use them more effectively than the Jim Hadar that they take them off of. So I'm like,
Well, that is a common trope in a lot of these types of shows is no one masters a weapon faster than the righteous, There there's nothing they can't
yeah,
achieve on the, with
right.
a wink and a
They're
nod,
good looking weapons. Don't get me wrong. I like the look of them. I
Yeah.
like the fact that they have a handle that you can grab behind the
A nice
blades. They're like
long
axe.
handle, right? It was a
uh,
long handle, and then you had the extra grip up there by the blade, then it had that
Yeah,
swooping point as
yeah.
well,
It
you
felt
know.
like to be very clear, like Dax and Worf going from a batleth to that, I felt made some sense. But like Cisco, like he kills a couple guys with one, and I'm like, Cisco's great, but I've never heard of
Well,
him being some like master, you
But
know,
Cisco, but
fighter.
Cisco does get knocked down and get knocked around a couple times, and he does get stabbed. Worf has to save him, and then yeah, he does get stabbed. So it's not like he's just super proficient or anything like that. But I
Yeah,
I get your point. For the numbers that we were told were there waiting on them
right.
versus who beams down and is doing everything, they simply don't have the
Right.
numbers, and there should have been way more
Now,
naming
I
going
I
on.
I would have given the show the benefit of the doubt if they had just simply mentioned something like they don't have a lot of white. They have minimal amounts of white, and therefore
That's a
they're not
great
able
point.
to,
Right,
you
they might
know,
have said that they've been cut off from their supply of Ketracel White, so they're experiencing withdrawals, so they might be going a little bit crazy and they're not, all with it and together. Just a little
right.
drop-in line there of a
Yeah, that's
of a
that's how we know we
plausibility
have a
thing.
chance to do this, is
Mhm.
because we know that our enemies, while they outnumber us, they're weakened right now. And if
Yeah.
we let them, you know, like the guy says, Wayun says, is like the reason we're not, calling in a bunch of battleships to take care of this is because we don't have time. We need to get this done right now. If the idea had been, yeah, the reason we have only right now to take care of this is because they have some white on the way, some of the drug on the
Or
way, or
that, because I can see that argument being, well, if we know that their supply of Ketracel White is going to run out, why don't we just wait them out? And they're like, well, no, because if they get the gateway fixed, they can just show
exactly
up anywhere
right,
and get the white that they need. So
right,
yeah, it would have still made the time crunch relevant, but it also would have shown why our heroes did have an edge. So it
yeah,
wouldn't have taken much, an extra 2 minutes in that little conversation between Wayun and Cisco to heighten the stakes a bit and
right,
just express, why you have this sliver of a chance would have helped out a lot.
right.
Yeah, I agree.
And it also could have helped tie in just a little bit more into the fact that Wayun is being petty with giving out the white to his
Yeah,
his
and
crew.
he's dismissive and he's just very, he's rude with their ritual and stuff. And he's just like,
Yes,
oh, just
yes,
all right, fine, just take it. You got to do this now. Got you like
yeah.
right.
Can you
Yeah,
swear
so
loyalty to the founders? Okay, I trust you. Blah blah blah.
blah
Yeah, and
blah
then
blah. I'm not even gonna look at you. Here's your vials. Get out of my face.
so it
Yeah.
actually was pretty funny when at the end of the episode he pops down. He's like, I want to go look around. And what's
Yeah. Oh,
the
we saw
first?
the explosion. Let's see that wreckage.
Yeah,
Yeah, like he
and
didn't
then
care.
and
And
then
then
the
the
one guy
Metacon's
like,
just like,
yeah, he
yeah.
doesn't even like look at him. He basically just like
Mhm.
pops it like, all right, you're useless to me now. Great,
Oh, you put
funny
the
moment.
case. And I couldn't help but notice he beams down and he's holding the case that's got the Ketracel White in it, right? And
Yeah,
then he
yeah, exactly.
puts it down and is like, "Hey, by the way, that wreckage," and it's like,
Right.
"Oh, you put down the thing that I need to survive. Bam, you're dead."
Yeah.
Like
Well,
you put
I
down
was
the one thing that was keeping you alive.
well, I felt it was funny though because I felt like, wait a minute, doesn't he? Wouldn't he have to like every single time open it up? Like the guys grab it after over his beamed, like his. There's no dead body. He's just disintegrates. I was surprised that they were like, oh, now we can just use it. Like he opened it once and now it's forever open. I guess I thought it would be like it only opens for a short time and then they have to reopen it every time they need more. But whatever.
I I
It's
think that that's
funny.
how it's I think that that's how it's supposed to work, but again, that's one of
Right.
those things we don't get a whole lot of explanations on. At the
Right.
same time, if they really wanted to get in there and get the vials, I don't think there's much that can stop them from getting in
Right.
there, you know.
Right.
So, but yeah, I think it's all supposed to be when the ceremony is done properly, there's no threat of the person of the Vorta being shot because
Right.
they're doing the ritual with the same reverence, or at
Right.
least pretending with the same reverence
Right.
that the Jem'Hadar would be, so that wouldn't be a concern for them.
Right.
Wayun's problem here is that he thoroughly disrespected the people that he was supposed to be commanding, and he didn't see that they didn't like him, or
Right.
either he didn't see it or he didn't care
Right.
because he figured he would just be able to lord the white over them.
Yeah,
So
I did feel like that him dying was kind of sudden and out of the blue, mainly because I felt like if he's the only one who can access the white, then killing him
mhm,
is it. I laughed when it happened, but I was
mhm.
also like, wait a minute, I thought that was like that isn't going to work. But again, if the idea is people that the Jem'Hadar on the planet had their own access to at least some white, some production capabilities, then yes, they could stay on the planet as they say they will and hunt down the Jem'Hadar, who are basically traitors. They're loyal to the founders. That's who they are. Again, interesting culture. The idea being like, yeah, this is our purpose is to fight, and the founders give that to us, even if they've basically artificially made it so that we have to be this way. This is who we are, and therefore we're going to fulfill our role. Interesting idea. I don't know if they're going to explore it much more than this, because we did have another episode. I think it was season 3 where they were on that planet with the one Jim Hadar dude who brought his people there because he thought he could get them off the white on that
Yes.
planet.
Right.
Um, but that failed. He couldn't get Bashir. Bashir wasn't able to recreate the drug in order to keep them. Like he wasn't able to synthesize a fake version that would keep them from dying before they could figure out how to get off of it. If I
Hmm.
remember correctly. But anyway,
That's correct.
um, yeah. So yeah, I'm glad the Jim Hadar and the Dominion were back. I also don't feel like this really moved forward the plot with the Dominion. I will say that. Like this doesn't
Um,
change the status quo all that much.
it doesn't overall change um change anything for where we stand with the Dominion. But
Right.
I think it does a great job of kind of reintroducing why the Dominion is a threat.
Right.
Because like you said, like a lot of the episodes hadn't really focused on the Dominion lately. And I think this is a great way to remind us that there's this very real threat just kind of out there. And it works
Right.
on a multitude of levels, not just by showing us by, watching our heroes work side by side with them, but also, I mean, the very opener with the station, a pylon's blown off and
Uh-huh.
Kira's clearly injured and people are dead everywhere and everything. And that was
Yeah.
just a strike team, a small team that went through and ransacked the station and stole stuff and did all this stuff. So it's a very graphic, especially for the start of the episode. It's a
Hmm.
very intense reminder that these guys are a threat. They're dangerous. And as Odo says, I'm surprised this didn't happen sooner. The station sitting right at the mouth of the wormhole does make for a tempting target. So, I mean, the fact that we've gone so long and been able to do all these other things that have popped up, O'Brien must suffer with his 20-year in his mind prison sentence and all this
Right.
other stuff that's happened in this season before we're now turning our focus back to the Jem'Hadar.
Right.
Um, yeah, it's a great way to remind us, I feel, that we still haven't uh, resolved this issue and that
Right.
it's only going to get worse.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Now, really quick, I did want to have a shout out to Clarence Thomas III, who played First Omedicline. I think he did a great job in this role. He was so serious, throughout his delivery of everything, and he's a pretty, or was, I should say, he died in 2021. So
Hmm.
I mean, he's a pretty serious actor. He's got a lot of acting creds to his name. I think probably the more famous thing that he'd have been known for would have been the Mod Squad back in the '60s, and then he just kind of went from there. He's been in a lot of different shows and movies and so forth. So if you're not, you might not think that you're familiar with who he is, but if you go and look him up, I'm pretty sure that you'll see his face and be like, oh yeah,
Gotcha.
I've seen that. I've seen that guy in something before. But yeah, he does a great job with his delivery here as the first of the Jem'Hadar, and
Clarence Williams the third.
Clarence Williams III. That is correct.
Okay. Yeah.
So he's got a really kind of that soft, creepy voice, that kind of, it's like he's, for everything he says is just always a veiled threat of violence. He delivers stuff like that very well. So and we get that a lot in this episode. So
Right.
yeah, great actor. He died again in 2021, colon cancer.
Gotcha.
So in
Hmm.
memoriam there.
Gotcha.
Well, before we close out this episode, of course, we have to highlight the fact that this is Star Trek Week. The very first episode of Star Trek aired September 8th, 1963. So we always like to give a little shout out there to that. And we have our own anniversary. This would officially be 2 years. We've been doing this show September 3rd, 2 years ago. We dropped our first official episode of
Hmm.
this podcast,
Right.
and we're still here. And we've got a lot more to cover, a lot more episodes, seasons to get through, not to mention the book series that we're doing, and we're going to get through all that. And we will be here until it's all over with, and we have to, I don't know, start over. Get David, get David's take on his second time around. And with the show, and I don't have to so much rely on uh standing back. I can
Well, I just want to
completely stand way
mention
out on this.
that 2 years in, I still don't know exactly know why we've titled our show "The Fire Caves" because there
Yeah.
was a reference in season one to fire caves, but that was an off comment by Cisco to Jake once. Want to go see the fire caves? I was like, great. We'll finally know why. Three,
So all you need to know,
two
so
years
all you
in,
know
nothing
so
else.
far is that the fire caves exist and that they're on Bajor. That's it.
Right.
You don't know
Yeah.
the other
That's it.
significance. Well, um, unfortunately, you got a long wait because they don't really talk about it until I believe.
Don't tell me. Don't tell me. I'll find out.
Well, actually, I think we might get because we're coming up on season 5, so I think we might get our first, kind of real dealing with the fire caves here soon.
Oh,
So you have to just stay tuned, and see if I'm right about that at all. Um, but yeah, for those of you who are also following along with the Star Trek Day stuff, they did a lot of this, last year and the year before. We had a lot of events and stuff like that you could attend virtually, conventions and so forth. And then this year, of course, there is nothing, mainly because of the writer strike, the SAG after strike that is still ongoing. So this year there was pretty much a 20-minute video, and then that was it. So very unfortunate. Hopefully next year they can kind of go back and back to the fanfare that we had in years previous. But either way, we'll be here. We'll be
yeah.
here next year to give you some more stuff.
Right.
What did you figure up? How long did you say it was going to take us to do?
Well, if there are like 176 episodes and there are technically 52 weeks in a year, then that would arguably put us around 3.5 years in. But if we take moments for after dark episodes, etc., I can see us taking a full 4 years to finish. I mean, I would moment we're
Four
past the
years.
halfway point, so
Hmm.
yeah, I don't think maybe we will. I don't think we'll get to the fourth anniversary of the show in that sense, but we'll
Yes,
be
we will.
deep into year three.
Yes, we will. We'll
You'll make it
make it.
happen.
We'll make it
Okay.
happen. We'll do
Got
some
another two
special
years out of us.
recaps, some shadows. Yes, we'll make
Yeah.
it to 4. We'll make it to 4. And then after that, if we're still interested in doing a podcast and things have been going extremely well, we'll find other things to talk about. Hopefully
Right.
this the writer strike will be over and we'll have all new content that we can also critique on a
Right.
whim and whatever else. But yeah.
Right.
So but any overall any final thoughts in the episode? What would you say? Give me
Well, before
one. Okay, go ahead.
I was gonna say, did we talk about Jeffrey Combs enough? I want to make sure I know that him as
Oh, yeah, I mean,
Wayun
so him as
is supposed
Wayun,
to
I
be.
mean, Jeffrey Combs is the prolific character actor for Star Trek. This was the first time that we see him as Wayun, but it's not the first time that we had seen Jeffrey Combs on Deep Space Nine. If you remember, there was an episode where there was the alien who was obsessed with Kira and wanted to get a Kira program in the holosuite.
Yes.
And he's the alien who was paying Quark to get the program, the
Okay. I thought
intimate
I
program.
recognized his voice. Like his
Yes,
voice is very distinct.
very distinct. So
Yeah.
he's that alien who is then, of course, hugely disappointed by the resulting program that he gets.
A cork head on a Kira body would make anyone
Yes.
upset.
So that was the first time that we saw uh, Jeffrey Combs on Deep Space Nine. The next time that we saw him was when he was Brunt, head of the FCA for the
That's
Ferengi
him. That's
Commerce
him. I
Alliance.
knew.
Yes,
Okay, that's the one I really remember him as. That makes a lot
yes,
more sense.
yes.
Yes. Okay.
So, and he did a great job as Brunt, of course. And I will tell you, this is not that we are not done with Brunt. We will see him again. So, when we did the most recent episode that we saw Brunt was the Union episode,
Yes. That was
and
only
he shows
like
up with the
a few.
Nausicans.
That was only like
I guess like maybe 3 weeks
5 or
ago, 4 weeks
6.
ago,
Yeah,
something
it's
like
pretty
that.
recent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I'm gonna
yeah,
double check it while we talk about it real quick. Let's see.
and
That
yeah, pretty
was
much they just like him so much. They're just like, can you just keep coming back and we'll do you new makeup?
yeah, Bar
And
Association.
yes,
Oh, and Mr. LeVar Burton also directed that episode. So I think it's LeVar Burton who is a
Ki-
particular fan.
oh, so LeVar Burton keeps bringing back Jeffrey Combs. That's
I'm
funny.
arguing that right here now. Yes, sir.
You know what? Well, I have to double check and see what that correlation is because I also know that LeVar Burton directed several episodes of Enterprise, and not Wayoon, but Jeffrey Combs is on Enterprise as Commander Shran. So I wonder how many episodes with Shran were also directed by LeVar Burton. See if there's a parallel. Maybe they had like a deal. I
Right.
do wherever I go, you go. You work. Jeffrey Combs also shows up on Deep Space Nine, or not Deep Space Nine. Of course, he's on Deep Space Nine. He shows up on Voyager as like a fight broker, and when a couple of the officers get captured and are forced to do, physical, martial arts battles and stuff like that, he's the MC, the promoter in that. And
Right.
then in Lower Decks, he voices a murderous computer terminal whose whole intent is to take over every system that it can uh,
Contact.
connect into and kill whomever tries to get in his way. So, lots of murderous, maniacal fun with him in that stellar voice he's got. So,
Gotcha. That's great.
so I got the opportunity to actually to meet and hear him speak in person several years ago, and I'm going to tell the joke that he told and see if you like it. How many Klingons does it take to screw in a light bulb?
Oh, you cut out. Sorry. Hold
Yeah, it's
on.
okay. How many how many Klingons does it take to screw in a light bulb?
How many?
Who the fuck cares? So
Wow. Okay.
that's my Jeffrey Combs joke. He told that at a convention when we were in Vegas for my 21st birthday, and it was same. Brought the house down. There were several people telling jokes, and he kind of ended it for us with that.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah. Man. Yeah. That's a good. That's a good like final joke. Like we're done telling jokes. Yeah.
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 Well, all right, guys. I think that's going to pretty much do it for us on this episode of The Fire Caves. You can watch all Star Trek on Paramount Plus. They're all there waiting for you, old and new. So go check those out. You can also find us and follow us anywhere that you do the social medias. We are back on Twitter, and we will have all kinds of stuff for you coming up in the next season, of course. And as always, you can listen
Right.
to us anywhere that you happen to listen to podcasts. I do it on Spotify. So until next week, guys, take care of yourselves.
Thanks, guys.